Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Reverend Tress Phillips, and I would love to welcome you to Red Deer Center for Spiritual Living. And I know the camera is not on me, and that's okay if nobody wants to look at my face, I guess. Well, today we have Reverend Judy Andersen speaking, and I'm not going to tell you what she's speaking about until I tell you about, we have membership forms, and they're pink, and they are inside of your bulletin, and if you haven't filled one out, please do so. And as well, we have an opening affirmation, and that is on your lovely blue sheet with the wonderful hearts. So please repeat with me. Trusting I awake to a new and fuller idea of love. Love lives as me, walks as me, and talks as me. Every moment is filled with its presence. Simply I am in love with my world and consciously embrace love as a way of being. I love life and life loves me, and so it is. And now, as well, we have our Science of Mind magazine, and they're $5, and it has daily spiritual practices in it. So if you wish to read that, I just love it. I read it every morning. Now, our growing spirit circle, the word is mercy. And so for all of the children of all ages, mercy. Justice is giving people what they deserve. Mercy is giving people more than they deserve. Being merciful means to treat others with compassion and forgiveness. When you are being merciful, you are willing to forgive even when you have been hurt. And the affirmation is, I see the divine in all. So will you repeat with me? I see the divine in all. And now it is my honor to introduce Reverend Judy Andersen. She's speaking on our theme, which is inner life. But her talk is Forgive to Live More. Oh boy. Reverend Judy.
Thank you, Reverend Tress. Actually, I'm Reverend Doug today, but so you've got to imagine the outline and the white beard instead of the blue hair, and whatever. But with the snow situation and the highways the way they were, I guess he thought it was probably not a good plan for him to come from Calgary. To begin, I usually would I will do a regular opening treatment, and then we'll go into a different kind of a prayer. I breathe, and as I do, I feel gratitude for that breath. Without that breath, I would not be in this physical plane of existence. So gratitude for the breath, gratitude for the day, Gratitude for life and all the good of life. Gratitude for every person here with us in this room, or with us online in the cyberspace, if you wish. Cyberspace is just another name for God expressing himself in a wonderful way. I give loving thanks that this day unfolds as a day of the divine and the divine in the day. And so I release my words, embracing the day exactly as it is, knowing only good, and so it is. Now I want to talk about what we call the Lord's Prayer. And I've shared this with you before, but there are words in it that kind of belong to the subject of the day, and that is about the need to forgive. So we go through, Our Father who art within, hallowed be thy nature. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in the outer as it is within. Give us this day our daily good, and forgive us our mistakes as we forgive the mistakes of others. Lead us out of darkness and deliver us into the light. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever, and so it is and ever shall be. But what I wanted to get to was changing it from sins or transgressions to mistakes. Can you forgive somebody if they made a mistake? I think most of us can. If you think someone has really abused us and we think in those terms, is it easy to forgive? Maybe not. But if we can reduce the way we think about that and say, they made a mistake, or maybe it was me that made the mistake. I spoke in an unkind way. I said something snarky. That was a mistake. That was not living my highest self. But if I can label it a mistake, maybe I can find a way to forgive myself. There's the nature of the topic. Now, I have to tell you, I only knew since 8 o'clock this morning that I was going to be here representing Reverend Doug. So forgive me if I'm not totally organized. I never am anyway. So let's get to the importance of forgiveness. The idea being the effect of holding resentment is a prison. It imprisons us in that state of beingness, of resentment, of unhappiness, of a feeling badly done by. And that ties up our expressions of love and caring and joy. That's why forgiveness is, that's one of the reasons that forgiving is so hugely important, not to the person who we think maybe wronged us, but it's super important to us. Did somebody step on my toe yesterday accidentally? Big deal. That's nothing to hold resentment about. What if they did it even on purpose? You know, in my young days, when I joined the Canadian Air Force I signed up for it when I was 2 days over 18. And I got into the Air Force, and that was pretty fun. It was 2 years of it. I call a 2-year beach party in Prince Edward Island. But there was one occasion, and I don't remember why or how it came up, because I didn't think there was any argument going on or anything that this young man had against me. But he picked up his heavy boot and hit me in the shin, probably not meaning to really hurt me, but it did. It really hurt. It left a dent in my bone. And it puzzles me to this day why that happened. But if I held on to a grievance about that since I was probably 19 by that time, heavens, I would have been holding resentment over that for the last 61 years. What would that do to me? You wonder sometimes why we get an upset stomach or we don't feel too good. Sometimes it's resentment stirring the pot. Things that haven't been forgiven. And I think that what most of us, well, nearly everybody I know, has a little bit of resentment because we think we weren't brought up the way we should have been. That our parents should have been this or that or that. They should have been more understanding. They should have been more strict. They should have required more of me. They should have encouraged me more. There's no end to the ways we think our parents should have been different. But guess what? They did the best they knew how to do. So are we carrying some, we'll call it blame, some blame around them, that they're the problem? They're what made all my problems come about? That's a losing game. When they were in their 20s or 30s or 40s while they were bringing me up, did they do the best they knew how to do? I didn't come with an owner's manual. And every child is different. And parents can only do the best they know how, somewhat to the way, based on the way they were raised. So every generation makes its own mistakes. So are we still carrying, here's me at 80, now nearly 82, am I going to carry with me into my final years resentment because I didn't think my parents understood me or did exactly right by me? That's pretty dumb. They've both been gone for quite a long time. And that is not a valid excuse. It's a prop. It's like having a crutch, even though we're able-bodied and can walk perfectly well on our own if we would choose to straighten up. But we're using the excuse of our parents were not understanding enough, whatever, or our spouse was not good enough or understanding enough or supportive enough, or this best friend wasn't supportive enough or strong enough or understanding enough. That, if you want to live all that you can be and get the zest out of life, holding on to those past mistakes is like putting a series of stumbling blocks in your road. And forgiving can clear those out one at a time. If you've been following the scene in Ottawa, you know what the police forces have been up against. Getting rid of those big rigs in downtown Ottawa, one at a time, towing them out of town to leave them in a safe place, but getting them, dismantling the blockage in downtown Ottawa, one item at a time. And it might be quite valuable for us if we took a piece of paper and wrote down some of the things that we think maybe we're holding on to that we shouldn't, that it's time to let them go. I've got lots of them. I could write a nice long list. My ex, he did such and such, and he's the reason, blah, blah. And actually, it was a blessing, because when I left him, I came to Red Deer. I got into the Center for Spiritual Living, 10 years later, after I got to Red Deer maybe, but nevertheless, it brought me to where I am today. So rather than blaming him, we each have chosen to embrace the time we spent together as a positive thing, And I exchanged loving birthday wishes and things with both him and his wife on Facebook, whatever. So not hanging on to my grievances out of that marriage freed me to come wholeheartedly into a relationship that is wonderful, thank you kindly. So letting go of the things in the past that we think may have harmed us or been a barrier to our progress, letting go and forgiving the mistakes of others. As we would wish, if you can go away from our teaching for a minute and visualize God as a super being, and we want that super being to forgive us because we stole a comic book when we were 8 years old, or we did such and such, or we broke something and told Mom that somebody else broke it. That kind of thing. If we expect to be held accountable for every little thing we've done in our lives that we did wrong, would we be very happy about that? Probably not. So why should we hang on to those grievances? Take a deep breath and let them go. Let them fall away. I'll read you a few quotes from Science of Mind. There is no sin but an error, nor is there punishment but the inevitable consequences. The wrong deed has its punishment because the law of cause and effect operates eternally. Right action also has its reward in the same way. We're not punished for our sins, as Ernest Holmes says, we are punished by them. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. Every thought is a cause. As Ernest also says, thoughts are not only things, they are the cause of things. My thoughts are the cause of my experience. So if I want a different experience tomorrow than I have today, I'd better change my thinking. Reverend Tress used the most brilliant analogy last week when she talked about our thoughts like walking a dog on a leash, whether we're leading the dog or whether we're letting the dog lead us. I've never heard a better analogy, Reverend Tress. That really was a great one. So if we're letting our lazy ideas and our angry ideas and our vengeful ideas lead our thoughts, then we're going to keep on getting more and more. We're setting the pattern that this is our expectation. Whereas, if we take charge, heal. You thoughts, you follow my commands, you follow what I decide. Today, my thoughts are to be loving thoughts, caring thoughts, forgiving thoughts. I choose to forgive. I make it a constant choice, and I decide that every time I think of something that someone did to me, or I think they did to me, or I think they spoke harshly to me, whatever, maybe I use a little magic wand and sprinkle a bit of forgiveness dust on them every time I think about them. There's another one. I go back to the story of Cinderella and the fairy godmother and sprinkling a little bit of stardust or gold dust or whatever it is to nullify not the event. The event was what it was, but my feelings about it, your feelings about a particular event in the past that you have judged yourself for. Oh, here we get into it. Self-judgment. Judge not, saith the Lord. So if you are judging yourself for something you did 5 years ago, or something you didn't do a year ago that you think you should have, If you want to make your way out of it and make it right, let go of the self-accusation and simply do what needs to be done. It's what I'd like to call a no-brainer. But why do we have so much trouble doing that? Why do we? Maybe because we feel we need to continue to punish ourselves in holding ourselves in that state of self-condemnation. Because if we made it right, then we wouldn't be condemning ourselves, and we figure we are guilty, so we should continue to be punished. It's a really weird thing, but we do that to ourselves. So if you would like to live in a state of grace, start the act of forgiveness, starting with yourself, and write down the ideas that need to be canceled. Do what is kind of a written meditation. Shut your eyes for a moment with a pen in your hand and your paper at the ready, and ask yourself, what is it that I need to forgive myself about? And don't stop to think, just write. Let it happen through you. Not a thought-out response, but a heart response. And keep doing that until you think maybe you've dealt with the worst of it, and that you're ready to go on and live more. Because so long as we're living with the constriction of our self-judgment, we are not living fully. We are alive, but if we want to live fully, we need to free ourselves, even as we would if we were in an actual prison. We would be confined physically. We wouldn't have freedom of movement. And in our consciousness, we are imprisoning ourselves if we are holding ourselves in a state of resentment, of judgment. So it isn't me you need to forgive. If I've said something that has upset you, you need first to forgive yourself for anything that you have ever judged yourself about. And maybe then you can get around to forgiving me and freeing yourself of that. If you're going to hold resentment against me for something I've said, maybe unconsciously, maybe inadvertently, but you felt hurt by it. If you keep holding that resentment, that is not going to hurt me, but it's going to hurt you. It's going to add another bar to your prison. So let's get back into the quotations again. Here is the one that is quite demanding of us. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 and 44, you have heard that it was said, love your enemies, bless him who curses you, do good to him who hates you, pray for those who take you by force and persecute you. In so doing, you will be sons of your heavenly Father. So not only forgive, but bless the people that have hurt us, or that we feel hurt because of their actions. Are we up for that challenge? To not only forgive, but to bless those that have hurt us, that despitefully use us. From that, we go to the words of Jesus on the cross as reported in the New Testament. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And isn't that the case with so many of us? If we're holding resentment against a parent for teaching us that we were less than worthy, forgive them. Not just Father, forgive them, but in my very heart, forgive them. They knew not what they were doing. They did the best they knew how. Forgive them. They know not what they do. In every situation, find forgiveness in it. Find forgiveness with your own heart. Find forgiveness, first of all, for yourself, for everything that you have ever judged yourself about. There are too many things, and each of us have had a different experience. I have had many things I've judged myself about. I've not been kind enough. I've not been friendly enough. I've been whatever. The truth is, I've been me. It's impossible for me to be anybody else. I've been me, doing the best I have known how at the time. So it's time to forgive myself for any and all perceived mistakes, errors in judgment, mistakes. They're not unforgivable. Have you ever heard the phrase, well, that's unforgivable? That is a self-sentencing. If it's unforgivable, if I say it's unforgivable, I am giving myself a life prison term. Is that a good thing to do? Don't think so. So let's see what else I've got here. We're all, especially right now with the situation with Russia and the Ukraine, we're all a little concerned, or maybe a little more than concerned, about world peace. Well, there is someone named, who was in the UN, Krishnamurti, and I don't know what nationality he was, but in a speech at the UN in 1984, he said, how can there be external peace in the world if one is not at peace with oneself? We will never have that answer. We are always trying to bring about change externally. We never seem to realize that unless each one of us changes radically, there will be no peace on earth. So, peace on earth only if each of us are at peace with ourselves and hopefully spread that feeling of peace with ourselves so that it reaches others. There's a little story called Heaven and Hell. A burly, rough samurai went to see a monk of small stature. Monk, he said to him, in the tone of voice of one who is accustomed to being instantly obeyed, teach me something about heaven and hell. The monk looked at the mighty warrior and replied with the utmost disdain, teach you something about heaven and hell? I couldn't teach you anything. You are dirty. You smell bad. Your sword is rusty. You are a disgrace in the lineage of the samurai. Get out of here. I can't stand you. The samurai became enraged. He trembled, and his face reddened. Mute with anger, he drew his sword and raised it, ready to kill him. That is hell, the monk told him softly. The samurai shuddered at the thought of the compassion and submission of this little man who had risked his life to show him hell. Slowly, he lowered his sword, full of gratitude and suddenly at peace. And that is heaven, the monk told him softly. Isn't that a beautiful story? A very graphic, a very vivid story of the difference between heaven and hell. Picking and choosing here, I printed off a whole bunch of stuff this morning, but way too much. Here's one I really like. We cannot release the true power of prayer while we hold on to unforgiveness. How about that for all of us who do a lot of praying, or what we might call spiritual mind treatment? We can't release the true power of the prayer while we're in a state of unforgiveness. Forgiveness is a process of recognizing that we have an opportunity for soul evolution. It calls us to see the gifts of personal growth behind all the hurts, pains, offenses, disappointment, and betrayal. I'm going to read that over again because one takes a little getting our minds around. Forgiveness is a process of recognizing that we have an opportunity for soul evolution. It calls us to see the gifts of personal growth behind all of the hurts, pain, offenses, disappointment, and betrayal. So, looking for the gift. We might have trouble finding it, but it's there somewhere. I know, like the story about the boy on his birthday who kept shoveling the barnyard, saying if there's all this excrement around, somewhere there must be a pony. So, yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty cute one. And that's kind of the way it is with us. If we act on the idea of forgiveness as being not for the benefit of the person that may have said a hurtful thing, but we look at every act of forgiveness as an act of kindness to ourselves. I would really like to be more kind to myself today by letting myself forgive, maybe not forget, but forgive and keep the event, the thing itself, as a lesson. As I had the experience when I was 21 of being raped, and it wasn't much fun. But when I came to terms with it, finally, after coming to the center and being told, take responsibility, take ownership of the event that harmed you or hurt you, and then you can change it. If you leave it out there, you can't do anything about the feelings inside you. But when I took responsibility for having shown up for that occasion, and when I took ownership of the event, then I could change my feelings around it. Forgiveness for the perpetrator? He's in the distant past. You know, he was 61 years ago. So the evening I was given that information about taking responsibility, taking ownership of an event, then being able to change it. Ever since then, there has been no emotion around it when I recall it or talk about it. The emotion and the negative feelings are gone, and there is only an event in my past that I learned a little bit from. So forgiveness isn't even a factor that's required at this point, because there is only the event and the learning from it and the letting it go by taking ownership of it. So forgiveness, taking responsibility for what has happened. Oh, how was I responsible for what somebody said to me that I found hurtful? There may have been something in me that triggered that, and if so, I forgive myself for that. And if not, if it was just the other person's pain that led them to say that, then it's easy to forgive them as well and set myself free. Set myself free to love and be loved and to live more fully, to live in what we call grace, a state of grace. Today, God's grace enfolds me, embraces me, supports me, and comforts me. In God's grace, there is no blame, there is no judgment. There is only mercy and compassion and love, and so it is. Well, not quite what I planned, but never is. So that pen is going to stay on the floor until someone with a more limber back comes and picks it up. Let's read our prosperity affirmation together. I am learning to give joyously, unconditionally of myself, my time, my love, and my wealth. As I do, I prosper in every way. My life is enriched in everything that matters. My relationships prosper. My financial affairs prosper. My health and creativity prosper. All is well, and so it is. And those of you who are here, of course, can drop your envelope in the basket. And those of you who are not here, but who choose to share with us, just contact the office if you want to know how to help support our center. And then let's go to our closing affirmation. Move forward with loving thoughts and loving acts, blessing every step of the journey. My dominant emotions are those of joy and gratitude, and they guide me in the ways of righteousness. Love is the nature of my journey. Love is a way. I embrace it all, and so it is. And a closing treatment, we could call it a benediction. Right here and right now, I bless this day. I bless all that has occurred in this meeting of souls, of hearts and minds. I bless what has been heard and what has been thought and what has been gained. And I give loving thoughts to all those who have been with us in the cyberspace, online, sitting safely in their own home on this day of slippery roads and lots of snow. With joy and love and in the grace of God, I release these words, and so it is.